what is the gift of healing, and has it ceased?
Yeah, so when we talk about cessationism, we're talking about we believe that certain gifts have ceased. One of the sophomoric pushbacks against cessationism is people will say, well, you guys believe that the Spirit doesn't work today or that people don't have spiritual gifts. That is completely untrue. We're talking about narrowly just the sign gifts. Miracles, prophecy, tongues. I argue that exorcism 4 times in the book of Acts is actually used in conjunction with this phrase signs and wonders. So I think exorcism is a sign and wonder.
Casting out of demons.
For example, Acts 8, 6 and 7 says, the crowds with one accord were giving attention to what was said by Philip, and they heard and saw signs which he was performing. For in the case of many who had unclean spirits, they were coming out of them and shouting with a loud voice, and many who had been paralyzed and lame were healed. So 4 times in Acts, signs and wonders is linked to exorcisms. So I also believe that we cannot exorcise demons today. Meaning, do I believe people can be demon-possessed? Yes, not Christians. Can those demons be exorcised? Yes, but not by a person who has been given a particular gift of exorcism. I think the way that people get free from demon possession is by preaching the gospel, praying to them, praying for them, those types of things. So again, making that distinction between a gift that a person has versus the way that God works. So going back to the question as it relates to healings, the sign gifts, some were revelatory, like revealing truth, prophecy, tongues. Others were more confirming. And I think the gift of miracles were confirming. And what were they confirming? Well, they were confirming the message of the apostles. So because the apostles were the foundation of the church, and that foundation has been laid, there's no more need for miracles because the foundation has already been laid. There are no more apostles today.
That's a huge point Ryan just said right there, because I was thinking that while you were talking. If we're going to attach these sign gifts to apostolic authority, the apostles, there are no living apostles today. Paul was the last one. He makes that clear in 1 Corinthians 15. To least of all, he revealed himself to me. Yeah. I'm the least of all the apostles, right? So if the sign gifts are attached to the apostles and the apostles have ceased, then the sign gifts with them have ceased as well.
To be an apostle, there's 3 requirements. Acts chapter 1, you had to be personally taught by Jesus, and you had to be a witness to the resurrection. And then you also had to be given the ability to work miracles. And so we would argue that, because there are no more apostles today, there's no more ability to work miracles. So continuationists often appeal to, they say there is apostles today. And the reason for that is because that then allows them to say, well, and so we can exercise miracles.
It's a sad thing because most continuations, maybe I shouldn't say most, but the majority that I see.
There's a spectrum.
Yeah, there is. Of course, and we want to be fair to our Pentecostal and more charismatic leaning brothers, because this isn't a salvation issue. Exactly. Although some would make it, if you don't speak in tongues, that's proof you're not saved.
We're not, to be clear.
We've already said that's false. But to be fair to those who do want to continue with the gifts, I mean, everybody has this idea that yes, it's mystical, it's mysterious, it seems powerful, it seems very energetic, and so there's this desire to want to be able to communicate to God and to other people on a level that is just it's sensational, right? But my experience with those who are at least the charlatans, I should say that the ones that are popular, the ones you see on TBN, the ones that are from the very oftentimes attached to prosperity movements and stuff like that, right? The Benny Hinns of the world. When they're talking about the continuation of these gifts, it is very individualistic. It's almost to the glory of themselves. And then you read in 1 Corinthians 12, Paul makes it very clear. Now, there are a variety of gifts, but the same Spirit, 1 Corinthians 12:4 and following. And there are varieties of service, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who empowers them in everyone, all and everyone. In verse 7, to each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. Right? And then he goes into the different working of miracles, prophecy, ability to distinguish between spirits. So the idea is, if you think there are a continuation of gifts and someone is doing it and it's not benefiting the church, it's not building others up, it's not growing people in their discipleship, but it's only putting a spotlight on the person with the gifts, it is false. Paul makes it very clear those gifts were given to people for the common good, for the upbuilding of the church.
This is the whole point why Paul writes to the church of Corinth, is because they were unloving. And they're using these gifts to elevate themselves.
That's right.
And so 1 Corinthians is not giving us a prescription of how to use gifts to elevate ourselves or to glorify God. It's a corrective letter. It's a messed up church, and everybody's exalting themselves. And so right in the middle of this teaching on spiritual gifts, Paul gives the chapter of love. And his whole point is that spiritual gifts are to edify the body, as Cory just pointed out. And if your primary motivation is not love, you are just totally worthless. You're an annoying sounding gong. And today, when churches elevate these gifts, they're missing the entire point of 1 Corinthians 12, 13, and 14. I would say this, and this I'm probably going to get pushback for this statement. A church that elevates gifts is a church that is unloving. Paul's whole point to the church of Corinth is knock it off, you're being unloving, because you're making something that was supposed to be about the glory of Christ and the good of the lost to be all about you. Stop it. Stop it.
Because like you said, the gifts were supposed to authenticate the message.
Yes.
And you know what? And what is, when it comes down to it, what is the manifestation, I would say, of when gifts were given, when we do see them in Acts, and when Brian already pointed out. It's funny, you tend to think like miracles are all over the New Testament, all over the Bible, and they're not. Gifts are talking about in 4 places, easy to remember because it's 12s and 4s. 1 Corinthians 12, Ephesians 4. Romans 12, 1 Peter 4. So 12, that's it. Outside of that, you don't see the gifting. And it's interesting when you brought up demon possession, exorcism. In the letter to Ephesians, there's not a single mention of doing any of these gifts. And this is about, it was to put on the helmet and you know, to stand fast in prayer. That we don't fight we fight, you know, spiritual battles, and nowhere in that letter to Ephesians as he talk about,
Or
you know,
Galatians
exercising these
and the
gifts.
fruit of the Spirit.
Right.
The fruit of the Spirit is not a supernatural manifestation.
It's not. So take it that, the fruit of the Spirit, and that's where I was going. Thank you for bringing me back. I think the proof, if there is proof that you have a gift of these, what authenticates it? It's a holy life. And
Fruit
it's a
of the
holy life
Spirit
that's loving.
is love.
That's right. It's a holy, loving life that encourages other believers. That's the authentication. It's not, look, I can go, should have bought a Honda, but I bought a Hyundai, right? Is that what you said?
That's
right?
pretty good. Yeah.
Those types of things, right?
A Hyundai.
Or Hyundai, right.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a tongue speaker.
Yeah, man. Moses, Toes, Roses, or whatever. Yeah.
I'll interpret.
The point is like, if there
That's what you do every podcast. Chris has the interpretation.
I have the gift of interpretation.
Yeah.
Right. Anyways, I think the point, I mean, if you think you have one of these gifts, if you're not exercising it and encouraging and edifying the body, you don't have it.
Yeah.
And it's not a gift that you have to train in. It's supernatural. It's immediately given for you to be able to do these things.
Yeah. I would just maybe piggyback on that and say that the gifts that God has given us, if we're not careful, we can abuse them. Paul says that there are some people that preach the gospel for selfish ambition. So there are people that have the gift of teaching that are using it to build their own following. And I think that it just, to add a pastoral footnote to everything Cory just said, would be that to every believer listening, no matter what spiritual gift you have, there is a danger in using it to promote self. To Cory's point, the point of the spiritual gifts is to love and edify the body.